Welcome to Solo Selling with Trevor White, and today I'm going to talk about anchor chain. So I've done a previous article or podcast on anchor chain, and I've been looking into anchor chains a lot. So before I got to New Zealand, I was looking at where I could potentially get some new anchor chain, who was selling it, how much it was selling for, but more importantly, what was suitable for my yacht and what was certified. I wanted certified L grade or a high-grade galvanised chain. I didn't want stainless steel. I didn't think I needed, and I thought it was overpriced for what it is. But I just definitely wanted a certified chain. And the reason I wanted it, because there's a lot of chain on the market, and some of that chain is not very well made. It is all about the same price. Surprisingly, chain from garbage quality at Bunnings. Yes, Bunnings, you sell the worst chain I've ever seen. And I've used a small piece which turned rusty incredibly fast, so that's the cheap Chinese shit you should never buy. And to the high quality Italian-made certified chain, there's not that big a difference in price, but there's a massive difference in quality. And I spent probably the best part of a week trying to get through all of the dramas of working out what chain was suitable for my yacht. So I have an old windlass. It's probably over 20 years old, and I just recently had it completely rebuilt in Fiji, up in Vuda Marina. So I didn't want to replace it, and it turned out that the gypsy, which is the part of the windlass that captures the chain and turns the chain into the chain locker, is supposed to have some form of writing on it to tell you what type of chain is fitted. Now mine is old, and it is either worn off or it was never written on there in the first place. There was no details on the boat about what type of chain it was, but there was chain, and I measured the chain very precisely with a pair of verniers to work out what type of chain I had. And I sent those details around. I also sent photographs of the windlass and the gypsy to different chain manufacturers, and some were quite blasé, and one was particularly punishing. He just kept coming back to me, like more details. So I figured I probably was talking to the right guy, a guy who wasn't going to just sell you anything. He wanted to sell you the right thing, was probably the person I needed to talk to. But I also found a local, like I was up in Whangarei, so most of the chain people were down in Auckland, and I was potentially ordering chain to be delivered to Whangarei. It worked out a lot more economical to deliver the chain to Whangarei than me drive down to Auckland. However, the chain distributor in Whangarei didn't have any chain on stock, but they could get samples up, and it was about the same price as what I was going to be paying in Auckland. And they also carried an American grade chain, or manufactured and produced in America, which, from my perspective, is pretty good, because Americans generally produce really high quality anchor chain and anchor products. So I was quite interested in that, but they couldn't get me 100 metres. I could get about 80 metres, maybe. It was in a barrel, it hadn't been counted or hadn't been measured. So I didn't want 80 metres, I wanted 100 metres or 120 metres even. I'd ripped out my anchor locker, and I'd cut a big hole in one of my storage bins to create more volume for my chain. So I made my anchor chain locker probably twice as big as what it was, because my anchor chain was piling up on itself previously, because it was quite rusty, so it wasn't falling as smoothly as I'd liked. And when I was pulling the chain up, even at 60 metres, I couldn't get the chain in there without going down and restuffing the anchor locker. So I created a lot more space, and I'd spent 2 days doing that. I'd gone in there, I'd cut it open, I'd reinforced it all, I'd created more storage on top of the anchor bin, and I'd put extra room in there to put rope. So I was planning to have, am going to have 100 metres of chain and another 60 metres of rope on the end of that. So if I really get in a deep pickle somewhere, I've got a lot more anchoring capacity than I did previously. Couple that to the Rockner anchor, and I think I'm in a pretty good shape. So the problem at hand was to find the right anchor chain, and I spoke to several people, and in the end I had really no choice but to get in the car and drive down to Auckland. And I'd rented this little tiny piece of shit car. It was a little 4-door Toyota Yass or something to that effect. Struggled to carry 4 people, I thought, and it was gutless, little automatic. But I figured I'm just going to drive down there, I'm going to load the chain into the car all over the floor, which would still be less than for adult males or adult people, and I'm going to drive back. And this little car's just going to have to suck it up because I've already hired it, and they were charging me what I consider to be a king's ransom for a little piece of shit car. And it was still going to cost me more to drive down than it was going to cost me to freight the chain up and put it in the back of a truck. So drove down, ended up having to get a hotel, because you can't sort of line it all up. There was roadworks on the way, so that delayed me as well. But I ended up finding a guy called James Brooke from Chains, Ropes and Anchors. And James is a legend. He's good to talk to. He didn't dick me around. He was persistent in trying to get the right chain for my boat, and he couldn't, and he refused to guarantee that what we were talking about was suitable. So that forced me just to take the gypsy off and drive down to Auckland, and so that's what I did. I drove down, took the gypsy, we got in there, and we worked out what I actually had was 3/8 chain, and it wasn't 10 mil, but it's bloody close. It's really close, and you couldn't really work that out until you'd put the 3/8 and put the 10 mil and put the L grade and 30 grade and high tensiles all on this gypsy, trying to find the best fit for my boat. And money really wasn't an issue. I was prepared to spend what I had to get the best chain I could put on TinTin. It's the insurance for my boat. You can insure your boat with insurer, but if you're in an anchorage in the middle of the night and it's blowing 60 knots, the only thing that's stopping you from getting wrecked on the reef is your anchor and your anchor chain and how you attach it to your boat. So I've been beefing all that stuff up a lot. So I wanted the strongest chain that I could get, a chain that was certified, and these guys had certified chain. They had lots of Italian-made chain, which is, I consider the Italians pretty good when it comes to making hard products. And most importantly, it was certified. So got down there, and a 3/8 chain, they didn't have enough of. They could only get about 40 metres out of bottom of a bin, but we worked out that's what I wanted. There's no way I was going to get any more chain in the next 3 or 4 months, because there was coming by ship, and there was none in Australia or Auckland, or sorry, New Zealand, at least not on the books. So we found a suitable, well, from my perspective, a suitable replacement. I've got 10 mil Aqua 3 short link chain. So it's ISO 4565 standard, grade 30. It's made in Italy by MFI, and it's galvanised chain. It's rated to 50 kilonewtons braking load, and at the time I purchased it, which is in May of 24, it was $24 a metre, $24.3 a metre. So yeah, I spent less than I thought. I spent 2,500 Kiwi. And the other thing you've got to remember, when you're in Kiwi land as an Australian, you're not paying GST because you're a visiting yacht. So that saved me quite a bit of money. It was a bonus for me, so there's no point in putting off buying the chain because I was getting it relatively cheap. I thought it was a reasonable price. Chain rated range from $16 a metre for Chinese L grade to about $26 at Burnsco, which is sort of the larger marine supplier, and they have a couple of different types of chain on offer, but they don't have the same level of experience, and I don't really know where it's coming from. Whereas this guy was, very particular, and if I was going to buy a chain in New Zealand, and I wasn't sure where I was going to go, but I wanted a chain that was going to last and hold my boat securely in a gale, then I would probably go to Chains, Ropes and Anchors, and I would talk to James, and I would maybe select the best chain you could afford. And if you can't afford it, take out a loan and buy the best chain anyway, because it is the insurance that your boat needs. It's the insurance that you need to keep yourself alive in a gale, and the best chain should hopefully not snap in a gale. Whereas there's a couple of stories going around, and one guy I spoke to had a friend whose boat had snapped the chain, and 3 or 4 other boats come to the rescue. They managed to get this guy. He sailed back out of Merverna Reef, which is on the way to Fiji, spent the couple of nights behind the reef just sailing back and forward until they could come in and recover the chain and the anchor, which must have been incredibly scary, because there's not that much room if you break a chain to react and get out of that place. And if the wind's too strong, you probably can't even get out of the cut. before you get pushed onto the rocks. And there's been a number of boats have been wrecked on that reef. And, it's in the middle of the ocean. On high tide, it's, you're getting a fair bit of the wave action. So it's not a place that you want to be sitting in with cheap Chinese chain. And I'm not saying that Chinese chain is any worse than other chains that are made some other places in the world, but it's a Chinese chain which is getting a bad rep at the moment. And you can buy it from about $16 a metre. So still grade 30, but it's not certified, and they will not give you any documentation regarding its certification, which I find ridiculous. If a chain manufacturer is making good quality chain, why he wouldn't test it and rate it? How much work is it to actually produce chain of a significant better quality? And so the Italians, they do rate it, they do certify it, they do test it, and they do give you documentation to say that it's certified. And to me, that means someone who's making a product is proud of their product. They're willing to stand behind it with their name, and I think that's very important. It's like, the Rockner anchor I have. I actually ran into the guy who designed and built the Rockner anchor and sat there for 4 hours. He came on my boat and had a look. I was standing next to his boat, admiring his boat, and then we got chatting, and I worked out who he was, and he came over, and we talked shit for about 4 hours about anchoring and anchor chains and anchor windlasses and how we secure our anchors to our boats. And I learned a lot talking to this guy, because he's done a lot of anchoring. He's been up through the Arctic. He's been down in Patagonia. He's anchored probably more gales than most people I've ever met. And I hope I never have to anchor in as many gales as he has. But, it also goes back to the chain. And the quality anchor, quality chain, quality hardware, good snubbers, all these things play an integral role in making your boat safe in a gale or a storm or anything else that you find yourself in. God forbid a cyclone or a hurricane. But these things do happen. last year I was in Fiji, and a cyclone went through Vanuatu and then turned south and kicked me on the arse before I managed to get to back to New Zealand. So you can find yourself out there. You can find yourself hiding in a little spot trying to protect your boat and your crew and yourself from destruction. And the best equipment possible is what you've got to buy. So, I can't say enough about chains, ropes and anchors. I think James, the young bloke I talked to, was a fantastic reference. Their shop is loaded with equipment, like loaded with anchors, loaded with ropes. I went and bought a heap of new mooring lines and did up a whole heap of new mooring lines, and I bought a whole swag of Dyneema to do a whole pile of new soft shackles, the ones were getting a bit worn. So overall, it's a great place to go into. You get really good advice. They've got loads of information and experience. So if you're looking for anchor chain, go to Auckland, walk in the door, and buy it from them. And he even helped load me up in my little shitty car, and we probably dropped the water line in that car for about 3 inches, but it still managed to get me back up to Whangarei. Good little Toyota. So I do have what I consider to be world-class chain on TinTin now. The chain I had, I think it was probably world-class, but it was world-class rusty, whereas this is Mickey Mouse, spotlessly clean, and I hope to get 10 years out of this chain at least. That's my plan. That's 10 years, and I'd be happy. If I can get more, I'd be even happier. Because I've got good quality chain, I'll probably get it re-galvanised, because down in Auckland, if I'm happy to be in that area, they do re-galvanise chain, and I had spoke to a guy who had his 100 metres of chain re-galvanised for $600 in Auckland, which I think is incredibly cheap. Amount of work involved in doing it. So that's what I would consider. Now that I know I've got really good quality chain, I've got enough of it to suit my needs. 100 metres is adequate for most places. And then back that up with another 60 metres of 18mm rope, and I feel like I'm in a good spot, and also coupled to a big-ass Rockner anchor. So that's me, anchoring 101 with TinTin, and buying the right chain for your boat. Hope that helps. I've done a bit of a plug for chains, ropes and anchors. They didn't give me any sponsorship, but they did give me a lot of good advice, and that's enough for me. All right, see you next time.